Blood dripped onto the cracked tile floor, pooling between Amara's trembling fingers as the broken cup shattered her last thread of hope. For 3 years she'd been invisible, a ghost grinding herself into dust to pay debts that weren't hers. But the man at table 7 saw everything, and when he spoke, the entire bakery went silent. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Touch her again, and I'll burn this place to the ground." Amara didn't know his name yet. She didn't know he'd been watching her for years. She only knew that her life had just ended, or begun. If you want to see where Amara's dangerous new world takes her, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It hammered against the grimy windows of Chen's bakery like fists demanding entry, turning the narrow streets outside into rivers of trash and regret. Inside, the air hung thick with the smell of burnt sugar and desperation. The overhead lights flickered every few minutes, casting shadows that made the peeling wallpaper look like diseased skin. Amara Vance moved through it all like a machine running on fumes. Her hands were raw from scrubbing pans. Her back screamed from 14-hour shifts that blurred into one endless loop of kneading, cleaning, serving, surviving. She was 18 years old and felt 40. The apron she wore, stained with flour and coffee and something darker she tried not to think about, hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight again. Not on purpose. She just forgot to eat sometimes. The breakfast rush had finally died down. A Tuesday morning in late October, and the bakery was half empty. A few regulars hunched over their tables, nursing watered-down coffee and yesterday's pastries. The television mounted in the corner droned the news. Something about a shipping warehouse fire on the east side, possible gang activity, authorities investigating. Nobody was listening. Amara's left hand throbbed. She'd burned it on the oven rack an hour ago, but she hadn't stopped moving long enough to run it under cold water. There was always something else that needed doing, always another demand from her Aunt Lydia, who sat behind the register with her arms folded and her mouth set in a permanent line of disapproval. "Table 7 needs a refill," Lydia called out, not looking up from her phone. Amara grabbed the coffee pot and moved toward the back corner table. She kept her eyes down. It was safer that way. "Don't make eye contact. Don't invite conversation. Don't give anyone a reason to notice you." Table 7 had been occupied since 7 that morning. A single man, mid-30s maybe, wearing a black coat that probably cost more than everything Amara owned. He hadn't ordered food, just black coffee, which he'd barely touched. He sat with his back to the wall, facing the door, watching. She'd caught him staring at her twice already. Amara approached the table, coffee pot extended. "Refill, sir?" "No." His voice was low, controlled, an accent she couldn't quite place, something that softened the edges of his English without making it unclear. She started to turn away. "Wait." She froze. Her heartbeat picked up speed for reasons she couldn't name. Slowly she turned back. He was looking directly at her now. Not the creepy once-over she'd gotten used to from customers who thought tipping an extra dollar earned them the right to her attention. This was different, sharper, like he was reading a book written on her skin. "Your hand," he said. "You're hurt." Amara glanced down. The burn on her left palm had started blistering. She pulled her sleeve down over it instinctively. "I'm fine." "You're not." Something in his tone made her look up. His eyes were dark, nearly black in the dim light. His face was angular, controlled, handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like a knife polished to a shine. "Really, it's nothing," she said quietly. "I should—" A crash from the kitchen cut her off. "Amara!" Lydia's voice cracked through the air like a whip. "Get back here, now!" The man's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Amara turned and hurried toward the kitchen, coffee pot still in hand. She pushed through the swinging door and found Lydia standing over a broken tray, pastries scattered across the floor like casualties. "Clean this up," Lydia snapped. "And when you're done, I need you to run to the storage unit. We're out of flour." "Aunt Lydia, did I ask for excuses?" Amara's throat tightened. She set down the coffee pot and grabbed the broom from the corner. Her burned hand screamed when she gripped the handle, but she didn't let it show on her face. She'd learned that lesson years ago. Lydia left without another word. Amara swept up the ruined pastries, dumped them in the trash, and mopped the floor. Then she grabbed her jacket, thin, patched at the elbows, and headed for the back door. The storage unit was 6 blocks away, in the rain, without an umbrella. She didn't complain. Complaining changed nothing. The rain soaked through her jacket before she made it half a block. By the time she reached the storage unit, her teeth were chattering and her shoes squelched with every step. She fumbled with the padlock, fingers numb and clumsy, finally got it open, and hauled out 2 20-pound bags of flour. Carrying them back to the bakery felt like dragging stones uphill. Her arms shook. Her vision blurred at the edges. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, a stale roll she'd found in the discard bin. But she kept moving, one foot in front of the other. That was all she had to do, just keep moving. By the time she stumbled back through the bakery's rear entrance, her body was on autopilot. She dropped the flour bags by the pantry, peeled off her soaked jacket, and returned to the front. The lunch crowd was starting to trickle in. Lydia pointed at tables that needed clearing, and Amara went to work. She was carrying a tray of dirty dishes toward the kitchen when it happened. A man in a business suit stood up too quickly, bumped into her shoulder. The tray tilted. Amara tried to catch it, overcorrected, and the whole thing went crashing to the floor. Ceramic shattered. Coffee splattered across the tile. A porcelain cup exploded into a dozen jagged pieces, and one of those pieces sliced clean across Amara's right palm. She gasped, more from shock than pain. Blood welled up immediately, bright red against her pale skin. It dripped onto the broken shards at her feet. "You stupid girl!" Lydia's voice exploded across the bakery. She came storming over, face flushed with rage. "Do you have any idea how much those dishes cost? That's coming out of your pay. All of it." Amara stood frozen, staring at her bleeding hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't—" "Sorry doesn't fix anything." Lydia grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You think you can just destroy my property and walk away? You owe me, Amara. You owe me for everything. Food, shelter, the roof over your worthless head. And now this?" The bakery had gone silent. Every customer was watching. Amara's face burned with humiliation. Blood dripped steadily onto the floor. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the tiles and never be seen again. "Let her go." The voice came from table 7. Lydia's head snapped around. "Excuse me?" The man in the black coat stood slowly. He moved with the kind of precision that made Amara think of predators, calm, controlled, lethal. He crossed the bakery floor in a few strides and stopped directly in front of Lydia. "I said let her go." Up close, he was taller than Amara had realized. Broad-shouldered, his presence filled the space like smoke, impossible to ignore. Lydia released Amara's arm, but her expression twisted with indignation. "This is my business, my employee. You have no right—" "Your employee is bleeding." His tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. "And you're more concerned with broken dishes than her injury. That tells me everything I need to know about you." Lydia's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The man turned to Amara. His gaze softened, just a fraction, but enough to notice. "Come here." She didn't move. Couldn't. "Amara." He said her name like he'd known it forever. "Let me see your hand." Something in his voice bypassed her fear. She stepped forward, extending her bleeding palm. He took her hand gently, examining the cut. His touch was warm, steady, professional. "Deep, but clean. It needs stitches." "I can't afford—" "You won't pay for anything." He pulled a pristine white handkerchief from his coat pocket and wrapped it carefully around her hand, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. "I'll take care of it." Lydia found her voice. "Now, wait just a minute. You're done talking." He didn't even look at her. "Amara doesn't work here anymore." The world tilted. "What?" Amara's voice came out strangled. "No, I can't just— I have debts. I owe her—" "You owe her nothing." His eyes locked onto hers. "And whatever money she claims you owe, I'll settle it, right now." Lydia's greed overtook her anger. "She owes me $42,000. Medical bills from when her mother died, funeral costs, 3 years of food and housing. It's all documented." 42,000. The number crushed Amara every time she heard it. An impossible sum. A life sentence. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then showed it to Lydia. Bank transfer, 60,000, 42 to clear her debt, and 18 as compensation for your inconvenience. Lydia's eyes went wide. Take it, he said quietly, and understand that if you ever contact Amara again, for any reason, you'll answer to me. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Lydia grabbed the phone, checked the screen, and her hands started shaking. She looked at Amara, then at the man, then back at the phone. Yes. Okay. The debt's cleared. Good. He took the phone back and slipped it into his pocket. Then he turned to Amara. Get your things. I don't understand. Her voice cracked. Who are you? Someone who's been looking for you for a very long time. Her pulse hammered. Looking for me? Why? He didn't answer. Instead, he placed a hand lightly on her back, not pushing, just guiding, and led her toward the door. Amara's mind raced. This didn't make sense. None of it made sense. Men didn't just walk into bakeries and pay off massive debts for strangers. They didn't speak with that kind of authority, that kind of certainty, unless they had power. Real power, the kind that came with danger. She should run, she should scream, But she didn't. Because for the first time in 3 years, someone had seen her, really seen her. Not as a tool or a burden or a debt to be collected. As a person. They stepped outside into the rain. A black car idled at the curb, sleek, expensive, windows tinted so dark they looked like oil. A driver stood beside it, holding an umbrella. The man opened the rear door. Get in. Amara hesitated. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. I don't even know your name. He studied her for a long moment. Rain dripped from his dark hair, but he didn't seem to notice. Seo Jun Kang. The name hit her like a punch. She'd heard it before. Everyone had. Whispered in alleys and bars, spoken with fear and respect. Seo Jun Kang wasn't just powerful. He was untouchable. Connected to every shadow in the city. A man who controlled territories, businesses, lives. A mafia boss. Amara's breath caught. I can't go with you. Yes, you can. His voice remained calm. Because you have no money, no home, and nowhere else to go. Because your aunt will take that 60,000 and disappear, and you'll be left with nothing. Because I'm offering you a choice, Amara. Come with me or go back to surviving. It's up to you. He was right. She hated that he was right. Her hand throbbed. Her body ached. She was so tired of being invisible. So tired of fighting just to make it through another day. Maybe this was insane. Maybe she'd regret it. But she got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and something faintly spiced. Cologne, maybe. The seats were soft enough to sink into. Amara sat stiffly, clutching her wrapped hand against her chest. Seo Jun slid in beside her and closed the door. The driver got behind the wheel without a word, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Amara stared out the window, watching the city blur past. Familiar streets gave way to unfamiliar ones. The buildings grew taller, cleaner. The people on the sidewalks wore suits and carried briefcases. Finally, she found her voice. Why did you do that? Pay off my debt? Because you needed help. People need help all the time. You don't rescue everyone. No. He turned to look at her. I don't. Then why me? Seo Jun was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something she couldn't quite name. Because I've been watching you, Amara, for 3 years. Her blood went cold. What? Not in the way you're thinking. He leaned back against the seat. I don't hurt children. I don't exploit the vulnerable. But I do pay attention to patterns, to people who fall through the cracks. That doesn't explain anything. Your mother, he said quietly. Elise Vance. She worked for me once, a long time ago. Amara's world tilted again. That's not possible. My mother was a nurse. She was, and she also helped me with certain medical situations that required discretion. She saved my life twice. When she got sick, I tried to help her, but she refused. Too proud. Too afraid of owing anyone. Tears burned behind Amara's eyes. She never mentioned you. She wouldn't have. Elise kept her world separate, but before she died, she asked me for one thing, to make sure you were safe. Then where have you been? The words came out harsher than she intended. I've been paying off her medical bills for 3 years, working myself to death for my aunt. If you cared so much, why didn't you help sooner? Seo Jun's jaw tightened. Because I didn't know where you were. Your aunt moved you 3 times, changed your phone number, made sure you were off the grid. It took me 2 years to find you. And then? And then I watched. I needed to understand the situation before I acted. Your aunt is manipulative, but not stupid. If I'd approached too soon, she would have disappeared with you. Or worse. Amara's head spun. This is insane. You expect me to believe that you've been… what? Stalking me? Protecting me from a distance? Yes. The simplicity of his answer left her speechless. The car turned onto a private road lined with iron gates and high walls. Security cameras tracked their movement. The driver punched a code into a keypad, and the gate swung open. They drove through manicured grounds, trees pruned to perfection, lawns that looked like green glass. The house at the end of the drive wasn't a house. It was an estate. Modern architecture, all sharp lines and floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of place that appeared in magazines. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. Come on, Seo Jun said, opening the door. Let's get that hand properly treated. Amara followed him inside, too overwhelmed to resist. The interior was just as intimidating as the exterior. Marble floors, minimalist furniture, art that probably cost more than most people made in a year. A woman in her 50s appeared from a side hallway. She had kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. Mr. Kang, you're back early. Min-hee, this is Amara Vance. She needs medical attention. Please call Dr. Choi. Min-hee's gaze softened when she saw Amara's wrapped hand. Of course. Right away. She disappeared down the hall. Seo Jun led Amara into a sitting room and gestured to a plush couch. Sit. The doctor will be here in 10 minutes. She sat, mostly because her legs felt unsteady. You have a doctor on call? I have many things on call. He removed his coat and draped it over a chair. Underneath, he wore a black shirt that fit him like it had been tailored specifically for his frame. Probably had been. Amara looked down at her own clothes. Torn jeans, a faded t-shirt with a coffee stain on the hem. She didn't belong here. I can't stay, she said quietly. Why not? Because I don't know you. Because this is crazy. Because… Her voice broke. Because I don't understand what you want from me. Seo Jun moved to sit across from her. He rested his elbows on his knees, hands clasped, and met her eyes with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. I want, he said slowly, to give you the life your mother wanted for you. Safety, stability, a future that isn't built on debt and exhaustion. Why? Because I owed her, and because you deserve better than what you've been given. I'm not your responsibility. You are now. The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Maybe it did. But underneath the fear was something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. A knock on the door interrupted them. Dr. Choi entered, a man in his 60s with steady hands and a calm demeanor. He examined Amara's cut, cleaned it with practiced efficiency, and stitched it closed without unnecessary commentary. Keep it dry for a week, he said, wrapping her hand in clean gauze. Come back in 10 days, and I'll remove the stitches. Thank you, Amara whispered. Dr. Choi nodded and left. Min-hee returned with a tray, tea, sandwiches, fruit. She set it on the low table between them. You must be hungry, dear. Amara's stomach growled in response. Min-hee smiled. Eat. I'll prepare a room for you upstairs. Wait. But Min-hee was already gone. Amara looked at Seo Jun. A room? You're not going back to that bakery. Or to your aunt, so yes, a room. For how long? As long as you need. She wanted to argue, to insist she could take care of herself. But the truth was, she couldn't. Not anymore. She was exhausted, hungry, hurt, and so tired of pretending she was fine. So instead of arguing, she picked up a sandwich and took a bite. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Seo Jun watched her eat with an expression she couldn't read. Not pity, not satisfaction, something deeper, something that made her feel like he was seeing every scar, every wound, every moment she'd survived alone. I need to know something, she said between bites. What do you expect from me, in exchange for all this? Nothing, That's not how the world works. It's how my world works. He leaned back. You're not a transaction, Amara. You're not collateral. I'm not keeping you here as leverage or entertainment. You're free to leave whenever you want. But you don't think I will. No. A faint smile touched his mouth. I don't. Why? Because you're smart. And you know that out there you have nothing. In here you have everything. He was right again. She hated it, but she kept eating. Minhee showed her to a bedroom on the second floor. It was larger than the entire bakery kitchen. Pale walls, a king-size bed with white linens, a private bathroom with a tub deep enough to drown in. There are clothes in the closet, Minhee said gently. Probably not your style, but they'll fit. Mr. Kong had them brought in this morning. Amar's head snapped around. This morning? He called ahead. Minhee's smile was knowing. He hoped you'd come. When Minhee left, Amara stood in the middle of the room, unsure what to do with herself. She opened the closet and found it full. Jeans, sweaters, dresses, all in her size. Shoes lined the bottom shelf. Everything looked expensive but understated. Practical. He'd known. Somehow, Seojun Kang had known she'd say yes before she'd even made the decision herself. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel seen. She showered, with hot water that didn't run out after 3 minutes. Scrubbed the flour and coffee and sweat from her skin. Washed her hair twice. Stood under the spray until her muscles stopped screaming. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything she'd ever owned, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Thin, bruised, a fresh bandage on her right hand, an old burn on her left. Circles under her eyes, dark enough to look like paint. She looked like someone who'd been fighting a losing battle for years. She looked like her mother had, near the end. Amara turned away from the mirror. She dressed in jeans and a plain sweater, towel-dried her hair, and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was so soft she sank into it. Outside the window, the rain had finally stopped. The sky was clearing, streaks of pink and orange breaking through the clouds. A knock on the door made her jump. "Come in," she called. Seojun entered carrying a small black box. He'd changed into casual clothes, dark jeans, a gray shirt. Less intimidating, but no less commanding. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Confused, tired, a little overwhelmed. "That's fair." He crossed the room and sat in the chair by the window. "I brought you something." He held out the box. Amara took it hesitantly. Inside was a phone. New, sleek, already set up. "I don't need—" "You do. Your old phone was on your aunt's plan. This one is yours. My number's already programmed in. So is Minhee's and Dr. Choi's. If you need anything, call." She stared at the phone. It felt like a lifeline and a chain at the same time. "Thank you," she said quietly. Seojun nodded. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then Amara asked the question that had been burning in her chest since the bakery. "What happens now?" "Now?" He tilted his head. "You rest. You heal. You decide what you want your life to look like. And you? What do you get out of this?" His gaze held hers. "Peace of mind, knowing I kept my promise to your mother." "That's all?" "For now." The honesty in his answer was more unsettling than a lie would have been. Amara set the phone on the nightstand. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to just exist without working myself to death." "You'll learn." "What if I don't fit here? What if—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "What if I disappoint you?" Seojun stood and moved closer. He crouched down so they were eye level, and when he spoke, his voice was firm, but not unkind. "You survived 3 years of hell, Amara. You worked yourself to the bone for a woman who didn't care if you lived or died. You kept going when most people would have broken. You don't disappoint me. You never could." Tears spilled over before she could stop them. She hadn't cried in years. Crying was weakness, and weakness got punished. But here, in this strange, beautiful room with this dangerous man who'd pulled her out of the fire, she couldn't hold it back anymore. Seojun didn't tell her to stop, didn't look away. He just stayed there, steady and present, until the tears ran dry. When she finally wiped her face, embarrassed and exhausted, he stood. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." He left without another word. Amara lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced with 1,000 questions, 1,000 fears. But underneath all of it was something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Relief. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't have to worry about where her next meal was coming from. Didn't have to count every dollar. Didn't have to wake up at 4 in the morning to scrub floors in a bakery that smelled like decay. She was safe. Maybe it wouldn't last. Maybe this was all some elaborate trap she didn't understand yet. But tonight, she didn't care. Tonight, she slept. Amara woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting realization that she'd slept for 14 hours straight. Her body felt heavy, drugged with the kind of deep rest she hadn't experienced in years. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The bakery, the blood, Seo-jun Kang, and his impossible offer. She sat up slowly, testing her injured hand. It throbbed, but didn't scream. The room looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more surreal, like a hotel suite she'd accidentally wandered into. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, her voice rough from sleep. Min-hee entered carrying a tray. The smell of fresh coffee and warm bread made Amara's stomach clench with hunger. "Good morning. I thought you might be hungry." "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." Min-hee set the tray on the small table by the window. "Mr. Kang asked me to let you sleep as long as you needed. He's in meetings this morning, but he'll be back this afternoon." Amara moved to the table, still wearing yesterday's borrowed clothes. The tray held more food than she'd normally eat in 2 days. Eggs, toast, fruit, pastries that actually looked edible. She picked up the coffee cup and took a sip. It was perfect. Not the watered-down sludge from the bakery, but rich and strong and exactly the right temperature. "Thank you," she said quietly. Min-hee smiled. "Take your time. When you're ready, I'll show you around the house. Mr. Kang thought you might feel more comfortable if you understood the space." After Min-hee left, Amara ate slowly, trying to process everything. Yesterday felt like a fever dream. Today felt like someone else's life. She didn't know how to reconcile the two. When she finished eating, she showered again, still marveling at the endless hot water, and dressed in clean jeans and a soft gray sweater from the closet. Everything fit perfectly. That detail bothered her more than it should have. It meant Seo-jun had been planning this, watching her closely enough to know her exact size. She found Min-hee downstairs in a massive kitchen that looked like something from a cooking show. All stainless steel and marble countertops with appliances Amara couldn't even name. "Ready for the tour?" Min-hee asked cheerfully. "I guess so." The estate was overwhelming. Min-hee walked her through room after room, a formal dining area that could seat 20, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a home gym, an actual movie theater. The wealth on display was staggering, but it didn't feel ostentatious. Everything was functional, clean-lined, purposeful. "Mr. Kang doesn't like clutter," Min-hee explained as they walked through a sitting room with minimalist furniture. "He says chaos on the outside creates chaos on the inside." "How long have you worked for him?" Amara asked. 8 years. He's a good man, despite what people say." "And what do people say?" Min-hee's expression turned careful. "That he's dangerous. That he controls half the city's underground operations. That crossing him means disappearing." She paused. "All of that is true, but it's not the whole truth." Amar stopped walking. "What's the rest?" "He's loyal. He protects the people who matter to him, and he keeps his promises no matter what they cost." Min-hee met her eyes. "Your mother mattered to him, which means you matter to him. That's not a small thing in his world." Before Amara could respond, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Male voices drifted down the hall. Seo-jun's low and controlled, another man's lighter, almost amused. They rounded the corner to find Seo-jun in the entrance hall with another man about his age. This one was leaner, with sharp features and an easy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He wore an expensive suit like it was a second skin. "Amara," Seo-jun said, his tone shifting to something warmer. "This is Elijah Park. He handles my legal operations." Elijah's smile widened. "Legal-adjacent operations. Let's be accurate." He extended his hand. "Nice to finally meet you. Jun's been talking about you for weeks." Amara shook his hand cautiously. "He has?" "Oh, constantly. Elijah, I need background checks on everyone within 3 blocks of the bakery." "Elijah, Find out if the aunt has any outstanding warrants. Elijah, I need property records for... That's enough, Seo-jun cut in, but there was no real heat in his voice. Elijah laughed. I'm just saying the man's been obsessed, in a totally normal, not at all creepy way. You're not helping, Seo-jun said flatly. I never do. Elijah turned back to Amara. Seriously, though, welcome. If you need anything, legal documents, paperwork, someone to explain what the hell you've gotten yourself into, I'm your guy. Min-hee cleared her throat. I'll leave you to it. Amara, if you need me, I'll be in the kitchen. She disappeared, leaving Amara alone with the two men. Seo-jun's gaze settled on her. How are you feeling? Confused, mostly. Fair. He gestured toward the sitting room they'd just toured. Can we talk? It wasn't really a question, but his tone made it sound like one. Amara nodded and followed him into the room. Elijah trailed behind, dropping onto one of the pristine white couches like he owned the place. Seo-jun remained standing. There are some things you need to understand about your situation, about what happened yesterday. Amara's stomach tightened. Okay. Your aunt didn't just exploit you. She lied to you. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then handed it to her. Those medical bills she claimed you owed? Most of them were already covered by your mother's insurance. The funeral costs? Inflated by about 300%. The housing and food expenses? Completely fabricated. Amara stared at the documents on the screen. Insurance statements, itemized bills, bank records. Her hands started shaking. But she said, she lied, Seo-jun repeated quietly. You probably owed her $10,000 at most, and even that's generous. The room tilted. Amara sat down hard on the nearest chair. 3 years. 3 years of killing herself for a debt that barely existed. 3 years of believing she was a burden, a liability, someone who had to earn the right to survive. I'm going to be sick, she whispered. Elijah was on his feet instantly, grabbing a trash can from the corner. He set it beside her chair and stepped back. Breathe, just breathe. She didn't throw up, but it was close. The nausea rolled through her in waves. When it finally passed, she looked up at Seo-jun. Why would she do that? Control, he said simply. And free labor. You were easier to manage if you believed you owed her everything. I should have known. I should have. You were 15 when your mother died, Seo-jun interrupted. Grieving, isolated, and being manipulated by the one person who was supposed to protect you. You didn't do anything wrong, Amara. Tears burned behind her eyes again. She blinked them back furiously. What else haven't you told me? Seo-jun exchanged a glance with Elijah. Something passed between them. A silent conversation Amara couldn't read. There's more, Seo-jun admitted, but I need you to stay calm. Just say it. He moved to sit across from her, elbows resting on his knees. I've been monitoring your aunt's activities since I found you. 3 months ago, she started meeting with a man named Victor Chen. The name meant nothing to Amara. Who's that? A loan shark, low-level criminal. He specializes in debt trafficking, buying people's obligations and then collecting through alternative means. Amar's blood went cold. What kind of means? Forced labor, sometimes worse. Seo-jun's jaw tightened. Your aunt was planning to sell your debt to him for $20,000. The room went silent. What? The word came out barely above a whisper. She was going to transfer your obligation to Victor, which would have meant you'd be working for him instead of her, in one of his establishments. Seo-jun's voice stayed level, but something dark flickered in his eyes. I couldn't let that happen. Amara's mind reeled. When? When was this supposed to happen? Next week. She thought she might actually be sick this time. If Seo-jun hadn't walked into that bakery yesterday, if he hadn't paid off the debt, if she'd worked just one more week. I need air, she gasped, standing abruptly. Seo-jun stood with her. Amara, I just need a minute, please. He stepped back, giving her space. Elijah pointed toward the back of the house. There's a terrace through those doors. Private. No one will bother you. She stumbled toward the doors he'd indicated, pushed through them, and found herself on a stone terrace overlooking manicured gardens. The air was cool and clean. She gripped the railing, knuckles white, and tried to remember how to breathe. Her aunt had been going to sell her, like property. like she was worth nothing more than $20,000 and whatever use someone could wring out of her body. The realization should have destroyed her. Maybe it would later, but right now, all she felt was rage. Behind her, the door opened quietly. She didn't turn around. "I know this is a lot," Seo-jun said, his voice closer than she expected. "A lot?" She laughed, but it came out sharp and broken. "You just told me I was days away from being trafficked. That's not a lot. That's—" Her voice cracked. "I don't even have a word for what that is." "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." She finally turned to face him. "You saved me. You pulled me out before it could happen. I should be thanking you, not—" She stopped, pressing her uninjured hand to her face. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel right now. Angry, scared, betrayed, all of it." Seo-jun moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his presence, but not touching. "You're allowed to feel everything at once." They stood there in silence for a long moment. The garden stretched out before them, peaceful and perfect, a world away from the crumbling bakery and her aunt's poisonous lies. "What happened to Victor Chen?" Amara asked quietly. "After you found out about the deal?" Seo-jun's expression went cold. "I made it very clear that you were off limits, that anyone who came near you would answer to me personally." "And he believed you?" "People in this city know better than to doubt me." There was something in his tone that made Amara shiver. This was the other side of Seo-jun Kang, the part that Min-hee had mentioned, the dangerous part, the part that made people disappear. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked suddenly. She considered the question honestly. "I don't know. Maybe I should be." "But you're not." "No." She met his eyes. "I'm not." "Why?" "Because if you wanted to hurt me, you wouldn't have gone through all this trouble first." She gestured back toward the house. "You would have just taken what you wanted and left. But you didn't. You gave me a choice." "You've given me nothing but choices since we met." Something shifted in his expression. "And if I told you that at some point I might ask you for something in return, would that change things?" Her pulse quickened. "What kind of something?" "I don't know yet." He turned to face her fully. "But I'm not a charity, Amara. I helped you because I owed your mother, yes, but also because I wanted to, because from the moment I saw you, He stopped, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I couldn't look away." "That sounds like obsession. Maybe it is." He didn't flinch from the accusation. "Does that scare you?" "It should. Everything about this situation should terrify her." But instead, she felt something else. Something that made her stomach flip and her skin feel too tight. "Ask me again later," she said quietly. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but close. "Fair enough." They went back inside to find Elijah sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as they entered. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Amara said, though her voice still shook slightly. "Good. Because I come bearing gifts." He pulled a folder from his briefcase and handed it to Seo-jun. New identity documents, social security card, birth certificate, high school diploma, all perfectly legal and completely untraceable to her aunt. Amara blinked. "New identity?" "Not new," Elijah corrected. "Restored. Your aunt had your documents locked down tight. I just made sure you could access your own life again." Seo-jun handed her the folder. Inside were crisp official documents, all bearing her name. "You'll need these if you want to do anything. Open a bank account, get a job, apply to school." "School," Amara repeated numbly. The word felt foreign. She'd graduated high school 3 months before her mother died, but college had never been a possibility, not with the debt hanging over her head. "If you want," Seo-jun said, "or you could work, or take time to figure out what you actually want to do with your life. The point is, the choice is yours now." Choices. He kept giving her choices when she'd spent 3 years without any. Elijah stood, stretching. "I should get going. I have a meeting with some very nervous accountants in an hour." He grinned at Amara. "Pleasure meeting you. I'm sure I'll be seeing a lot more of you." After he left, Seo-jun walked Amara back to the kitchen, where Min-hee was preparing lunch. The smell of roasted vegetables and garlic filled the air. "Hungry?" Min-hee asked. "Always," Amara admitted. They ate at the kitchen island, something Min-hee called bibimbap, all rice and vegetables, and a perfectly fried egg on top. It was delicious. Everything here was delicious. Amara had to keep reminding herself that this was real, that she wasn't going to wake up back in the bakery's dingy storage room. After lunch, Seo-jun led her to the library. It was the kind of room she'd only seen in movies, wall-to-wall books, rolling ladders, leather chairs positioned near massive windows. "I need to make some calls," he said. "You can stay here or anywhere else in the house. You're not a prisoner, Amara. Go wherever you want." She believed him, which was strange, considering everything. He left and she found herself alone in a library bigger than most public ones. She ran her fingers along the spines, classics, modern fiction, history, philosophy. Some in English, some in Korean, some in languages she didn't recognize. She pulled out a worn copy of Jane Eyre and settled into one of the leather chairs. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, warm on her face. For the first time in years, she had nothing to do. No floors to scrub, no customers to serve, no aunt screaming at her for breathing wrong. Just silence and books and the strange, fragile possibility of peace. She must have dozed off, because when she opened her eyes, the light had changed. Golden hour. The book had fallen onto her lap. "You look comfortable." She jerked upright to find Seo-jun standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets. He'd changed into more casual clothes, dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look less like a crime boss and more like a dangerously attractive stranger. "Sorry," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "I didn't mean to fall asleep." "Don't apologize. You needed rest." He moved closer, studying her with that unnerving intensity. "I have something to show you, if you're up for it." Curiosity won out over caution. "What is it?" "You'll see." He led her through the house to a wing she hadn't explored yet. At the end of the hall, he opened a door and gestured for her to enter. The room took her breath away. It was an art studio, huge windows letting in the fading light, easels and canvases stacked against the walls, shelves full of paints and brushes and supplies. Everything looked brand new and untouched. "I don't understand," Amara said slowly. Seo-jun moved to stand beside her. "Your mother told me you used to paint, before she got sick. She said you were talented." Amara's throat tightened. "I haven't painted in 4 years." "I know, but I thought maybe you'd want to start again." She walked deeper into the room, trailing her fingers over a blank canvas. Her mother had scraped together money for art supplies when Amara was younger, cheap watercolors and student-grade paper. But it had been enough. Painting had been her escape, her language when words failed. Then her mother got sick, and there was no time for escape. No money for supplies, no space for anything except survival. "Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you shouldn't have to give up the things that make you who you are just to survive." She turned to look at him. "You barely know me." "I know enough." He moved closer, and she could see the honesty in his eyes. "I know you're stronger than you think. I know you've been carrying weight that would break most people. I know you deserve the chance to figure out who you are when you're not just trying to stay alive." Something in his words cracked open a part of her she'd kept locked away for years, the part that still dreamed, that still hoped. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and turned to leave, giving her space. "Seo-jun?" He stopped at the door. "What do you get out of this? Really?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something raw. "Peace. Knowing I kept my promise to your mother, and maybe—" He paused. "Maybe the chance to know you, if you'll let me." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened. "I have to take this. I'll be in my office if you need anything." He left quickly, all business again. Amara stood alone in the studio, surrounded by possibility. She picked up a brush, tested its weight in her hand. It felt foreign and familiar at once. She didn't paint that evening. But she stayed in the room until the sun set, reacquainting herself with tools she'd thought she'd never touch again. That night at dinner, Seo-jun was distracted. He answered her questions politely but briefly, his attention clearly elsewhere. Min-hee noticed too, shooting him concerned looks that he ignored. After they ate, he excused himself. "I have some business to handle. I'll probably be late. Don't wait up." "Is everything okay?" Amara asked. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It will be. He left through the front door, and minutes later she heard the car pull away. Min-hee started clearing the dishes. He does this sometimes. The work he does, it's not 9 to 5. What exactly does he do? Min-hee gave her a knowing look. Whatever needs doing, and he's very good at it. Amara helped with the dishes despite Min-hee's protests. It felt wrong to sit idle while someone else worked. When they finished, Min-hee squeezed her shoulder gently. He'll keep you safe, she said quietly. Whatever else happens, know that. After Min-hee retired to her own quarters, Amara wandered the house restlessly. Too much had happened in the past 48 hours. Her mind couldn't settle. She ended up back in the library, curled in the same chair, trying to read. But her thoughts kept drifting to Seo-jun, to the way he looked at her, to the studio he'd built for a girl he claimed to barely know, to the darkness in his voice when he'd talked about protecting her. She must have fallen asleep again because she woke to the sound of the front door closing. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. She checked her phone. 2:30 in the morning. Curiosity pulled her out of the chair. She moved quietly toward the entrance hall. Seo-jun stood near the door, his back to her. Even from behind, something was wrong. His posture was too rigid, his movements too careful. Are you okay? She asked. He turned sharply, and her breath caught. Blood. On his shirt, his hands, a smear across his jaw. You should be asleep, he said, his voice rough. You're hurt. I'm fine. She moved closer despite the warning in his tone. You're covered in blood. It's not mine. The words should have sent her running. Instead, they anchored her in place. She knew what he was, what he did. But seeing the evidence made it real in a way nothing else had. What happened? She asked quietly. Nothing you need to worry about. Seo-jun, Victor Chen made a mistake, he said flatly. He thought he could still collect on a debt that no longer existed. He sent men to watch this house, to watch you. Ice flooded her veins. What did you do? What I had to. His eyes met hers, and there was no apology in them. I made sure they understood that coming near you again would be the last thing they ever did. She should be horrified, should be backing away from the violence radiating off him like heat, but all she felt was relief. They won't come back? She asked. No. And Victor? Won't be a problem anymore. She understood what he wasn't saying. Victor Chen was either dead or too terrified to ever speak Amara's name again, and Seo-jun had made that happen with his own hands. You should be scared of me right now, he said, watching her carefully. I know. But you're not. No. She stepped closer until they were only a few feet apart. You did that for me. To protect me. How am I supposed to be scared of that? Something flickered in his expression, surprise maybe, or something deeper. Most people would run. I'm not most people. No. His voice dropped lower. You're not. The air between them felt charged, electric, dangerous in a completely different way. You should clean up, Amara said finally, breaking the moment. Get some rest. And you should go back to bed. Forget you saw this. I don't think I can forget anything about you. The words came out before she could stop them. Raw, honest. Seo-jun's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he might say something, do something, but instead he stepped back. Good night, Amara. Good night. She watched him disappear down the hall toward his private quarters. Then she stood alone in the entrance hall, heart racing, trying to understand what was happening to her. She should be terrified, should be planning her escape, should be questioning every choice that led her to this moment. But instead, she felt safer than she had in years. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. She didn't sleep after that. Amara lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the image of Seo-jun covered in blood. Someone else's blood. And the complete absence of fear she'd felt standing in front of him. Normal people would have run. Normal people would have called the police, grabbed their things, gotten as far away as possible from a man who solved problems with violence. But she wasn't normal. Not anymore. Maybe she never had been. Morning came slowly. When sunlight finally crept through the windows, Amara gave up on sleep and headed downstairs. The house was quiet. She found Min-hee in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast. You're up early, Min-hee said, glancing at her. Then her expression shifted to concern. You didn't sleep well. Is it that obvious? You have your mother's eyes. They show everything. Minhee poured coffee into a mug and handed it to her. Sit, eat. Whatever's bothering you will still be there after breakfast, but at least you'll have the strength to face it. Amara sat at the island, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. Is he here? Seo-jun? Left an hour ago. He had meetings. Minhee set a plate of food in front of her. Rice, grilled fish, vegetables. He'll be back this afternoon. Does he always leave this early? When there's work to do, yes. Minhee studied her carefully. You saw him last night when he came home. It wasn't a question. Yes, Amara admitted, and you're still here. Where else would I go? Minhee's expression softened. You're braver than you think, child. Or maybe just smart enough to know the difference between danger and protection. Amara picked at her food. He killed someone, didn't he? Or hurt them badly enough that it doesn't matter? Probably. But ask yourself this. Would you rather he'd done nothing? Let those men keep watching you, waiting for their chance? The thought made her stomach turn. No. Then you have your answer. Minhee poured herself coffee and sat across from Amara. I know what Mr. Kang is, what he does. I'm not blind to it, but I also know he's never hurt anyone who didn't deserve it, and he's never broken a promise. That's more than I can say for most men. They ate in comfortable silence. When Amara finished, she helped Minhee clean up despite the older woman's protests. It felt good to have something to do with her hands. I was thinking about painting today, Amara said as she dried a plate. In the studio. Minhee smiled. That's wonderful. Your mother would be so happy to know you're painting again. The mention of her mother sent a pang through Amara's chest. Did you know her? My mom. Only briefly. She came here once, about 6 years ago. Mr. Kang had been shot. Nothing life-threatening, but he needed someone he could trust. She patched him up, didn't ask questions, didn't judge. I remember thinking she was one of the strongest women I'd ever met. Amara's throat tightened. She never told me she knew him. She was protecting you from this world, from the complications that come with knowing someone like Mr. Kang. Minhee touched Amara's shoulder gently, but she also made him promise to watch over you if anything happened to her. That's not something you ask of a stranger. She trusted him. With her life. And with yours. After helping in the kitchen, Amara retreated to the art studio. Sunlight poured through the massive windows, illuminating dust motes floating in the air. She stood in the center of the room, surrounded by blank canvases and untouched supplies, and felt paralyzed by possibility. She hadn't painted in 4 years. What if she'd forgotten how? What if her hands didn't remember the movements, the pressure, the way to translate what she saw in her mind onto canvas? Start small, she told herself. Just start. She selected a medium-sized canvas and set it on an easel. Chose brushes and acrylics, colors she'd always loved. Deep blues and grays, touches of gold. Then she stood there with a palette in one hand and a brush in the other, waiting for something to come. Nothing did. Her mind was too full, too chaotic. Images kept flashing. The bakery, her aunt's cruel face, Seo-jun standing in the entrance hall covered in blood. The studio he'd built for her, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered. She closed her eyes and took a breath. Then another. Slowly, something began to take shape in her thoughts. Not a complete image, but a feeling. The suffocation of the bakery. The moment Seo-jun had appeared. The shift from darkness to light, from drowning to breathing. Her hand moved. The first brushstroke felt clumsy, uncertain, but the second came easier. Then the third. Colors began to blend on the canvas, dark and heavy at the bottom, gradually lightening toward the top. She worked without thinking, letting muscle memory take over. She didn't know how long she'd been painting when the door opened behind her. Don't stop on my account. Seo-jun's voice was quiet, careful not to startle her. Amara turned, brush still in hand. He stood in the doorway wearing a dark suit, looking every inch the powerful businessman. But his eyes tracked to the canvas behind her, and something shifted in his expression. It's not finished, she said quickly. It's barely even started. I don't know what I'm doing yet. It doesn't matter. He moved into the room, stopping a respectful distance away. The point is that you're doing it. She looked back at the canvas. The painting was abstract, chaotic, but there was something there, something true. I thought you had meetings all day, she said. I did. They're done. He loosened his tie slightly. I wanted to check on you. I'm fine. Are you? His gaze was penetrating. After last night? She set down her brush and palette, wiping her hands on a rag. I should be traumatized, or scared, or packing my things to leave. But you're not. No? She met his eyes. Does that make me crazy? It makes you a survivor. He moved closer, studying her face. Most people don't understand the difference between violence and protection. They see blood and think monster. But you've lived long enough in the dark to know that sometimes monsters are the only thing standing between you and worse monsters. Is that what you are? A monster? Yes. No hesitation. But I'm your monster, if you'll have me. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. What does that mean? Amar asked quietly. Having you? Seojun was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. It means I want you in my life, permanently. Not as a debt repaid or a promise kept, as something more. Her heart hammered against her ribs. I've been here less than a week. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're stronger than anyone who's ever tried to break you. I know you don't run when things get hard. I know you see people for what they are, not what they pretend to be. He took another step closer, and I know that from the moment I saw you 3 years ago, I haven't been able to think about anyone else. That's not normal. No, it's not. His honesty was almost brutal. But nothing about my life is normal, and I think nothing about yours is either. Amara's hand shook slightly. What are you asking me? To stay. To let me take care of you. To give me the chance to prove that I can be more than just the man who saved you. He paused. And eventually, when you're ready, to marry me. The last 3 words hit her like a physical blow. What? I want you as my wife, Amara. Not someday. Not in some distant future. Soon. She took a step back, needing space. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. We barely know each other. I know you better than you think. And you know me better than most people ever will. You've seen the worst of what I am, and you're still here. Because I had nowhere else to go. That's not true anymore. His voice stayed level. I gave you money, documents, freedom. You could leave right now, and I wouldn't stop you. But you're still here. Why? She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because he was right. She could leave. She had the means now. But the thought of walking away from this house, from him, felt wrong in a way she couldn't explain. I don't love you, she said finally. I know. Something flickered in his eyes, pain maybe, but also understanding. I'm not asking you to. Not yet. I'm asking you to give me the chance to earn it. By marrying you? That's insane. Maybe, but it's also practical. He moved to sit in one of the chairs by the window, giving her space. In my world, perception is everything. If you're my wife, you're untouchable. No one would dare come near you. You'd have protection, resources, freedom to do whatever you want with your life. And what would you get? You. Simple. Direct. I'd get to wake up every day knowing you're safe, knowing you're mine. That's all I want. Amara's mind spun. This was crazy. Everything about this was crazy. She'd known this man for less than a week, and he was proposing marriage like it was a business transaction. But wasn't that exactly what her life had been? A transaction? 3 years of her labor for a fabricated debt? At least Seojun was honest about what he wanted. I need time, she said. I need to think. Take all the time you need. He stood, adjusting his suit jacket. I'm not going anywhere. And neither is the offer. He started to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I meant what I said. You're not a transaction to me. You're not collateral or a trophy. You're the first person in 10 years who's made me feel like I might be capable of something other than violence and control. Then he was gone, leaving Amara alone with her half-finished painting and a proposal that should have terrified her but instead felt like the first real choice she'd been given in years. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Seojun gave her space, didn't push, didn't bring up the marriage proposal again. But his presence was constant. He joined her for meals, asked about her painting, treated her like someone who mattered rather than someone he owned. It was disorienting. Elijah visited twice more, bringing legal documents that officially separated Amara from any remaining ties to her aunt. He was charming and funny, making her laugh with stories about Seojun's early days building his empire. He was terrifying even then, Elijah said over coffee one afternoon. But fair. That's the thing people don't understand. Jun doesn't hurt people for fun. He hurts them when they break the rules. And he's very clear about what the rules are. What are the rules? Amara asked. Don't lie to him. Don't betray him. Don't hurt the people he protects. Elijah grinned. Pretty simple, really. And if someone breaks them, then they learn very quickly why everyone in this city is afraid of him. Minhee filled the quiet spaces with stories about Seojun, carefully selected anecdotes that painted him as more than just a crime boss. The time he'd paid for a struggling family's medical bills, the way he protected the people who worked for him, his strange loyalty to a stray cat that lived in the garden. Amara knew what they were doing. They were showing her the human underneath the monster, and it was working. She spent hours in the studio, painting out the chaos in her head. The canvases piled up, abstract pieces full of dark and light, violence and beauty, fear and safety all tangled together. Seojun would sometimes watch from the doorway, never interrupting, just observing. It should have made her uncomfortable, but instead it felt grounding, like he was anchoring her to something solid. On the fifth night, Amara couldn't sleep again. She wandered down to the kitchen around midnight and found Seojun already there, sitting at the island with a glass of whiskey and a stack of papers. He looked up when she entered. Can't sleep? Too much in my head. She moved to the refrigerator looking for water. You? Work. He set down his pen. There's always work. She poured herself water and sat across from him. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Can I ask you something? Amara said. Anything. Why me? Really, not the promise to my mother, not the debt. Why do you want me? Seojun took a slow sip of his whiskey. You want the truth? Always. Because when I watched you these past 3 years, I saw myself. Someone fighting to survive in a world that didn't care if they lived or died. Someone who kept getting up even when staying down would have been easier. I built my empire from nothing, Amara. I clawed my way up from the streets with blood on my hands and bodies behind me, and I've been alone the entire time. He set down his glass. Then I saw you, and for the first time I thought maybe I didn't have to be. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in her chest. I'm not some perfect person, she said quietly. I'm angry and scared, and I don't know how to be anything other than what I've had to be to survive. Good. I don't want perfect. I want real. What if I can't give you what you need? What if you can? He leaned forward. What if instead of asking what I want from you, you ask yourself what you want from me? From this life? Amara thought about it. Really thought about it. I want to feel safe. I want to paint. I want to never be hungry or invisible or worthless again. Done. I want autonomy, control over my own life. You'll have it. I want honesty. Always. Even when it's ugly. You already have that. His eyes didn't leave hers. Anything else? She hesitated. Then, because he'd asked for honesty, she gave it. I want to understand you, the real you. Not the monster everyone's afraid of, not the protector, but the person underneath all of it. Something shifted in his expression. That's a dangerous thing to want. I know. There are parts of me that are dark, Amara, parts that can't be fixed or changed or made pretty. I'm not asking you to be pretty. I'm asking you to be honest. He studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, walked around the island, and extended his hand. Come with me. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, grounding. He led her through the house to a part she'd never explored, down a hallway, through a door that required a key code, down a set of stairs into what looked like a basement level. The space was enormous. One section was clearly a gym with weights and training equipment. Another held filing cabinets and computers, an office of sorts. But Seojun led her past all of that to a small room at the back. He unlocked the door and flipped on the light. The walls were covered in photographs, surveillance shots mostly, and many of them were of her. Amara's breath caught. I told you I'd been watching, Seo-jun said quietly. This is what I meant. She moved closer, studying the images. Her leaving the bakery, walking to the storage unit, sitting alone on a bench during her rare breaks. The photographs spanned years, documenting her life from a distance. This should terrify me, she whispered, but it doesn't. No. She turned to face him. Because you weren't watching to hurt me. You were watching to protect me. I was watching because I couldn't look away. He moved to stand beside her. Every time I saw you, I wanted to step in, to pull you out of that hell. But I knew if I moved too soon, your aunt would disappear with you. So I waited. And I watched. And I hated every second of knowing you were suffering and not being able to stop it. Amara looked back at the photographs. You're obsessed with me. Yes. That's not normal. I know. It should scare me. It should. He turned her to face him, hands gentle on her shoulders. But I think you understand obsession. I think you've spent 3 years obsessed with surviving, with making it through one more day. That's all I've been doing too, surviving, until I saw you. Her heart pounded. What happens now? That's up to you. His hands slid from her shoulders to her hands, holding them carefully. I've shown you who I am. The darkness, the obsession, the violence. Now you decide if you can live with that. Amara looked down at their joined hands. His were scarred, rough from years of fighting. Hers were marked with burns and cuts from the bakery, healing but not healed. They matched. Two broken people who'd survived things that should have destroyed them. I need to know something, she said. If I say yes, to staying, to marrying you, to all of it, what happens when I disappoint you? When I'm not what you thought I was? That won't happen. But if it does, Amara. He waited until she met his eyes. I've seen you at your worst. Exhausted, injured, trapped, invisible. And I still wanted you. You could never disappoint me because I already know who you are. I'm not building you up in my head as some fantasy. I want the real you, flaws and anger and fear and all. She wanted to believe him. More than anything, she wanted to believe that someone could see all of her, the damage and the darkness, and still choose her. I need more time, she said finally. Okay. But I'm not saying no. Something like hope flickered across his face. Okay. He led her back upstairs. At her bedroom door, he stopped. Thank you, he said quietly, for not running. Thank you for not making me want to. His hand lifted as if to touch her face, then dropped. Too much, too soon. Instead, he stepped back. Good night, Amara. Good night. She watched him walk away, then closed herself in her room. Her mind raced for hours before exhaustion finally pulled her under. In her dreams, she painted. But instead of chaos, the images were clear. A hand reaching out of darkness, another hand taking it, light breaking through shadows. When she woke the next morning, she knew her answer. She found Seo-jun in his office, working through a stack of papers. He looked up when she knocked on the open door, and something in her expression made him stand. I'll marry you, she said. No preamble, no hesitation. He went very still. You're sure? No, I'm terrified, but I'm sure that I want to try. I want to see what this could be. She stepped into the room. But I have conditions. Name them. I want a prenup. I don't want your money if this doesn't work out. I want to know I can walk away if I need to. Done. I want to finish my education. Maybe go to college. I don't know what I want to study yet, but I want the option. Whatever you want. And I want time. I'm not ready for... She felt heat rise in her face. I need time before we're actually together, like a real married couple. Understanding crossed his face. Of course. This marriage is on your timeline, Amara. All of it. I won't touch you until you ask me to. The promise in his voice made something warm unfold in her chest. Okay, she said. Then yes, I'll marry you. Seo-jun crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was tight, almost desperate. She felt his heart racing against her chest, matching her own. Thank you, he said into her hair. I'll make this worth it, I promise. You already have. And in that moment, wrapped in the arms of a dangerous man who'd built her an art studio and waited patiently for her to choose him, Amara finally understood what safety felt like. It wasn't the absence of danger. It was knowing that when danger came, someone would stand between you and it without hesitation. Someone who would burn the world down to keep you whole. The engagement, if it could even be called that, lasted 3 days before everything fell apart. Elijah arrived the morning after Amara's agreement with the leather portfolio and his usual irreverent grin. He spread documents across the dining room table while Seo Jun stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean to someone who was clearly not delivering good news. Prenup straightforward, Elijah said, pointing to various sections. Everything that's his stays his if you separate. Everything you acquire independently stays yours. No alimony claims from either side. You get a trust fund regardless, enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life even if you walked out tomorrow. Amara scanned the numbers and felt dizzy. This is too much. It's insurance, Elijah corrected. June wants you to know you're choosing him, not his money. This way, there's no question. Seo Jun ended his call and joined them at the table. His jaw was tight, stress evident in the set of his shoulders. Problem? Nothing I can't handle. He looked at Amara. You comfortable with everything? She nodded, even though comfortable wasn't the right word. Overwhelmed, maybe. Terrified. But also strangely certain. Then sign wherever Elijah indicates. We'll have the marriage license filed tomorrow. Tomorrow? The word came out strangled. That's fast. I told you I wanted soon. Seo Jun's expression softened slightly. But if you need more time, no. She picked up the pen before she could overthink it. No, let's do it. She signed her name 4 times. Her hand shook on the last signature. Elijah witnessed the documents, then gathered them back into his portfolio. I'll file these today. Congratulations, you two. Try not to kill each other before the honeymoon. There won't be a honeymoon, Seo Jun said flatly. Not until she wants one. After Elijah left, Amara stood awkwardly in the dining room, unsure what came next. Seo Jun made another phone call, this one clipped and angry. When he hung up, he looked at her with something like apology in his eyes. I have to leave for a few hours. There's a situation that needs handling. What kind of situation? He hesitated. The kind I don't want you involved in. I'm going to be your wife. Doesn't that mean I'm already involved? Not like this. He moved closer, and she could see the tension radiating off him. One of my suppliers got ambitious. Thought he could renegotiate our terms by going around me to my competitors. I need to remind him why that's a bad idea. The implication was clear. You're going to hurt him. I'm going to make sure he understands the consequences of betrayal. How I do that depends on how smart he is. Amara should have been horrified, should have argued, but instead she just nodded. Be careful. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe relief. I will. Minhee's here if you need anything. Don't leave the property. Why not? Because until we're married, you're vulnerable. After, you'll be untouchable. But right now, you're in limbo. He touched her face briefly, thumb brushing her cheek. 3 days. Then no one can touch you. He left, and the house felt emptier without him. Amara tried to paint, but couldn't focus. Her mind kept circling back to the prenup, the marriage license, the impossible speed at which her life was changing. A week ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was about to become the wife of one of the most dangerous men in the city. The absurdity should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first time in years she'd been allowed to make a choice that was entirely her own. She was in the studio, staring at a blank canvas, when Min-hee knocked softly. Amara? You have a visitor? Her stomach clenched. Who? A woman. She says she's your aunt. Ice flooded Amara's veins. Tell her I'm not here. I tried. She's insisting. Min-hee's expression was troubled. Mr. Kang said not to let anyone in, but she's causing a scene at the gate. The security guards are ready to remove her, but I thought you should know. Amara's hands curled into fists. Part of her wanted to hide, to let the guards throw Lydia out. But another part, the part that had survived 3 years of abuse, wanted to face her, to show her that she wasn't powerless anymore. I'll talk to her, Amara said, but not alone. Can someone stay with me? Of course. They walked to the front of the property together. Through the iron gates, Amara could see her aunt pacing like a caged animal. Lydia looked different, thinner, more desperate. The $60,000 Seo Jun had given her clearly hadn't lasted. Amara approached the gate but didn't open it. Metal bars between them felt appropriate. What do you want? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Lydia's face twisted. What do I want? You disappear for a week, and that's all you have to say to me? You sold my debt to a human trafficker. I don't owe you conversation. That's a lie. Who told you that? That man? The criminal who's keeping you prisoner? Amara laughed, sharp, bitter. He's not keeping me prisoner. He saved me from you. Saved you? Lydia's voice rose. I took you in when your mother died. I gave you a home, food, a job. You lied about the debt. You made up numbers and kept me trapped for 3 years while you planned to sell me to Victor Chen for $20,000. Amara's voice shook with rage. Don't you dare pretend you cared about me. Lydia's expression flickered. Guilt, then anger. You don't understand. I had expenses. Bills. Your mother left me with nothing but problems. And you were just one more. Get out. The words came out cold. Leave. Now. Before I call the guards. You think you're better than me now? Because some rich criminal bought you? You're nothing, Amara. You'll always be nothing. Just like your mother. The mention of her mother snapped something inside Amara. She stepped closer to the gate, voice dropping to something dangerous. My mother was twice the person you'll ever be. She actually cared about people. She saved lives. All you've ever done is destroy them. Your mother was a fool who died penniless and alone, and you're a monster who'll die the same way. Except no one will mourn you. Lydia's face went red. You ungrateful little... We're done. Amara turned to the security guard standing nearby. Remove her. If she comes back, call the police. You can't do this, Lydia shouted as the guard approached her. I'm family. You owe me. I don't owe you anything. Not anymore. Amara walked back toward the house, shaking but unbroken. Minhee followed silently, giving her space to process. Inside, Amara collapsed onto the nearest couch, adrenaline draining from her body. I should feel bad. But you don't, Minhee said gently. No, I feel free. Good. That woman doesn't deserve your guilt or your pity. Minhee sat beside her. You stood up for yourself. Your mother would be proud. The words broke something open in Amara's chest. Tears came suddenly, unexpectedly. Minhee pulled her into a gentle embrace and let her cry. When Seo-jun returned hours later, Amara was in the library, curled up with a book she wasn't really reading. He appeared in the doorway and she looked up to find blood on his knuckles. You're hurt, she said. It's nothing. But he didn't hide his hands, didn't pretend. Did you kill him, the supplier? No. Just made sure he understood the price of disloyalty. Seo-jun moved into the room. Minhee told me about your aunt. She came to cause trouble, and you handled it. Pride colored his voice. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm not. Amara set down her book. I needed to face her myself. To prove I could. He sat across from her. How do you feel? Lighter, like I cut off something that was weighing me down. She paused. She called my mother a fool. Seo-jun's expression darkened. Your mother was one of the strongest people I've ever met. She saved my life twice and never asked for anything in return. That's not foolishness. That's courage. Tell me about her. About when you knew her. He leaned back, choosing his words carefully. The first time we met, I'd been shot during a deal gone wrong. My own doctor was out of the country, and I was bleeding out in a warehouse. One of my men knew your mother from the hospital. He brought her in the middle of the night. She could have refused, could have called the police. Instead, she showed up with a medical bag and steady hands. Amara listened, hungry for any piece of her mother she'd never known. She didn't flinch, didn't judge, just worked. She dug the bullet out, stitched me up, gave me antibiotics and instructions. When I tried to pay her, she refused, said she took an oath to save lives, and money didn't change that. That sounds like her. The second time, I'd been poisoned. My body was shutting down. She sat with me for 3 days, monitoring my vitals, adjusting medications. She didn't sleep, just kept me alive through sheer force of will. His voice softened. When I recovered, I asked her why she kept helping me when she knew what I was. You know what she said? What? That everyone deserves a chance to live. Even the broken ones. Maybe especially the broken ones. He met Amara's eyes. She saw something in me worth saving. I think that's why I can't stop seeing the same thing in you. Amara's throat tightened. She never told me any of this. She was protecting you. From my world. From the complications. He paused. But she made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd watch over you. Not control you or own you. Just make sure you had the chance to become whoever you wanted to be. And marrying you helps with that how? A faint smile touched his mouth. It keeps you safe while you figure it out. Everything else, the money, the house, the studio, those are just tools. The marriage is protection. Is that really all it is to you? His smile faded. No, but that's all it needs to be for you. For now. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. I should clean up, Seo-jun said eventually, standing. And you should eat. Min-hee made something special for dinner. Celebrating? Hoping. He offered her a small smile. 3 more days. Those 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and strange domesticity. Elijah returned with the marriage license and enough paperwork to drown in. Min-hee fussed over Amara, insisting she needed proper clothes for the ceremony, even though it would be a simple courthouse affair. You're only getting married once, Min-hee said firmly, pulling dresses from the closet. It should mean something. It does mean something, just not the traditional thing. All the more reason to mark it properly. Amara tried on 3 dresses before finding one that felt right. Simple, elegant, cream-colored. Not white. She wasn't that kind of bride. The night before the wedding, she couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs around midnight and found Seo-jun in the same place as before. Kitchen, whiskey, paperwork. Déjà vu, she said. He looked up. Can't sleep? Nervous? Second thoughts? Third and fourth thoughts. She poured herself water and sat across from him. But not enough to run. What are you nervous about? Everything. What if I'm making a mistake? What if this doesn't work? What if... She stopped. What if I can't be what you need? Amara. He set down his pen. Tomorrow, we're going to sign some papers and become legally bound. But nothing else has to change. You'll still have your room, your space, your freedom. This marriage is whatever we make it. There's no script we have to follow. You say that now. I'll say it a year from now, too. He reached across the table, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. She put her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. I'm going to mess this up, she whispered. Probably. I will, too. We'll mess it up together and figure it out as we go. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Everything else is just noise. She wanted to believe him. Maybe she did, just a little. The wedding happened at 10 in the morning at the courthouse downtown. No guests except Elijah and Min-hee. No flowers or music or ceremony beyond the legal minimum. The judge was professional and efficient, probably used to marriages that had nothing to do with love. Amara wore the cream dress and felt like she was playing pretend. Seo-jun wore a dark suit and looked at her like she was something precious. When the judge asked if she took Seo-jun Kang as her lawfully wedded husband, Amara's voice barely shook. I do. When Seo-jun said the same words, they sounded like a vow carved in stone. You may kiss the bride. Seo-jun looked at her, asking permission. Amara nodded slightly. The kiss was brief, chaste, just a brush of lips that somehow still sent electricity down her spine. When he pulled back, something in his expression had shifted, like a door had opened. They signed the certificate. The judge declared them married. And just like that, Amara Vance became Amara Kang. In the car on the way back to the estate, Amara stared at the marriage certificate in her hands. Her name looked strange next to his. You okay? Seo-jun asked. Ask me in a year. He smiled. Fair enough. Back at the house, Min-hee had prepared a celebratory lunch. They ate together, 4 people who'd somehow become the closest thing to family any of them had. Elijah made inappropriate jokes. Min-hee fussed. Seo-jun stayed close to Amara without crowding her. It felt almost normal. Almost like this could actually work. That illusion lasted exactly 4 hours. Amara was in the studio trying to paint away her nervous energy when she heard shouting from somewhere in the house. Male voices, angry and overlapping. Then a crash. She set down her brush and moved into the hallway. The sounds were coming from the front of the house. She headed that direction, heart pounding. Min-hee appeared, face pale. Amara, you need to go back to your room. Lock the door. What's happening? Please, just... Another crash. Glass shattering. Then Seo Jun's voice, cold and lethal. You have 3 seconds to leave before I kill you where you stand. Amara pushed past Min-hee and ran toward the entrance hall. She rounded the corner and froze. 6 men stood in the foyer, all armed. One of them, tall, scarred, probably in his 50s, had a gun pointed at Seo Jun. Seo Jun stood perfectly still, hands visible but ready. 3 of his own security guards flanked him, weapons drawn. The standoff was a breath away from bloodshed. Amara, get out of here, Seo Jun said without looking at her. Now. The scarred man's gaze shifted to her. His smile was cruel. So this is the wife, the reason you've been distracted. She has nothing to do with our business, Constantine. No? I think she has everything to do with it. Constantine's gun didn't waver. You've been weak, Jun, soft, spending your time on some girl instead of handling your territories. People are starting to wonder if you've lost your edge. I haven't lost anything. Prove it. Send her away. Get back to work. Forget this ridiculous marriage. Amara's mind raced. This was a test, a power play, and she was the leverage. Or what? Seo Jun's voice dropped to something dangerous. You'll shoot me. In my own home. You're not that stupid, Constantine. Maybe not, but I might shoot her. See if you're still soft when she's bleeding on your floor. The gun swung toward Amara. Everything happened at once. Seo Jun moved, faster than should have been possible, putting himself between Amara and the gun. His guards raised their weapons. Constantine's men did the same. Don't, Seo Jun said, and the command in his voice could have stopped a train. You pull that trigger, and you're dead before she hits the ground. All of you. And then I'll burn your entire organization to ash and scatter your families to the wind. Is 1 bullet worth that? Constantine's hand wavered. You can't protect her forever. Watch me. Seo Jun didn't move, didn't flinch. You came here to test me, to see if marriage made me weak, but you miscalculated. She doesn't make me weak. She makes me absolutely certain of what I'm willing to do to protect what's mine. And right now that means ending anyone stupid enough to threaten her. The air felt electric, violent. Amara's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Constantine stared at Seo Jun for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered his gun. We'll see how long this lasts. Get out. Constantine and his men backed toward the door. When they were gone, the security guards finally lowered their weapons. Seo Jun turned to Amara. Blood had drained from his face. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. He closed the distance between them and pulled her against his chest. She felt his heart racing, felt the tremor in his hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This was never supposed to happen. Who was that? Competition. Someone who thinks I've gotten soft. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. He's wrong. He pointed a gun at me. I know, and he'll pay for that. But first, he looked at Min-hee, who'd appeared in the doorway. Take Amara upstairs. Stay with her. Lock the doors. No, Amara said. I'm not hiding. Amara, you said marrying you would make me untouchable. That worked out great. This is different. Constantine was testing boundaries. Now he knows exactly where they are. Seo Jun's hands framed her face. Please, let me handle this. She wanted to argue, but the fear in his eyes, genuine, raw fear, stopped her. How long? A few hours. I need to make some calls, reinforce security, send a message. He pressed his forehead to hers briefly. I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise. You can't promise that. I can, and I do. He kissed her forehead, then stepped back. Min-hee, take her upstairs. No one gets through that door except me. Understood? Min-hee nodded and guided Amara toward the stairs. In her room, Amara paced while Min-hee sat quietly in the corner. The older woman didn't try to make conversation, just provided steady presence. An hour passed, then 2. Amara heard cars arriving and leaving, voices raised in anger. At one point, a gunshot echoed from somewhere outside and she flinched hard. Min-hee stood. It's okay. Just a warning shot. You don't know that. I've been here 8 years. I know what sounds mean what. When the door finally opened, Amara spun around, ready to fight or run. But it was Seo Jun, looking exhausted and grim. Blood splattered his shirt, more than just his knuckles this time. "Is it done?" she asked. "It's handled. Constantine won't be a problem anymore. Neither will anyone else who thinks you're a weakness they can exploit." "What did you do?" "What I had to." He moved into the room, and Min-hee quietly excused herself. When they were alone, Seo Jun's shoulders sagged slightly. "I'm sorry. This isn't what you signed up for." "I signed up for you. This is part of you. You shouldn't have to live in fear." "I've lived in fear for 3 years. At least now I know someone's fighting back." She crossed to him, studying the blood on his clothes. "Is any of this yours?" "No." "Good." She surprised herself by meaning it. He searched her face. "You're not running." "Where would I go?" She managed a weak smile. "I'm legally bound to you now, for better or worse." "This is definitely worse." "Then it can only get better from here." Something in his expression cracked. He pulled her into his arms, not gentle this time, but desperate, like he needed to feel her solid and whole against him. Amara held him back just as tightly. They stood there in the fading light, two people who'd survived too much and somehow found each other in the wreckage. "I meant what I said," Seo Jun murmured against her hair. "I'll burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you." And standing there in his arms, covered in someone else's blood, Amara believed him. More than that, she was grateful for it. The days after Constantine's intrusion changed something fundamental between them. Seo Jun doubled security, installed additional cameras, hired more guards. The estate became a fortress. But more than that, the walls between him and Amara began to crumble in ways neither of them had anticipated. She started joining him for breakfast every morning, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. They'd sit at the kitchen island with coffee and Min-hee's cooking, talking about nothing and everything. He told her about his childhood in Korea, the poverty that had driven him into darker paths. She told him about her mother's final days, the guilt she still carried for not being able to save her. "You were a child," Seo Jun said one morning, 3 weeks after the wedding. "You did everything you could. It wasn't enough. It never feels like enough when you lose someone you love." His fingers brushed hers across the table. "But that doesn't mean you failed." These small touches had become more frequent, his hand on her back when they walked through the house, her fingers catching his when she was anxious. Nothing sexual, nothing demanding, just connection. Proof that they were both still here, still whole. Amara spent her afternoons painting. The studio had become her sanctuary, and the canvases piled up, some abstract, some surprisingly realistic. She painted her mother's hands, the bakery's crumbling walls, Seo Jun's eyes in darkness. Each piece felt like exorcising a ghost. One afternoon, she was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear him enter. When she finally noticed him standing in the doorway, she jumped. "How long have you been there?" 10 minutes, maybe longer." He moved closer, studying the canvas. It was her latest piece, a figure emerging from shadows, reaching toward light. "This is incredible." "It's not finished." "It doesn't need to be." He looked at her instead of the painting. "You have real talent, Amara. You should think about showing these, selling them." She laughed. Who would buy paintings from someone nobody's heard of? Someone who recognizes art when they see it. He pulled out his phone. "I know a gallery owner. She owes me a favor. Let me make a call." "Seo Jun, you don't have to." "I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm doing it because you deserve to be seen." The gallery showing happened 6 weeks later. A small exhibition in an upscale part of the city, invitation only. Amara was terrified. She'd never shown her work to anyone except her mother, and now strangers would judge it, critique it, maybe dismiss it entirely. "They're going to hate it," she said the night before, pacing their bedroom. She'd moved into the master suite 2 weeks earlier, not into Seo Jun's bed, but into the connected room that was meant to be hers, separate but together. It felt right. Seo Jun looked up from his laptop. "They won't." "You don't know that. I know your work is raw and honest and more real than anything else in that gallery." He stood, crossing to where she stood by the window. "But even if they all hated it, which they won't, it wouldn't matter. You're not painting for them. You're painting because you have to, because it's part of who you are." She turned to face him. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just good at seeing people clearly." His hand came up to cup her face. "And I see you, Amara. All of you. The scared parts and the brave parts and everything in between. You're extraordinary. The words hit her harder than she expected. No one had ever called her extraordinary. No one had ever looked at her the way he did, like she was something worth protecting and celebrating at the same time. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For giving me this. All of it. The space to become something other than just someone who survives. His thumb brushed her cheek. You were always more than that. You just needed room to remember. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither of them had acknowledged yet. Seo-jun's gaze dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes. Asking permission he hadn't asked for before. Amara's heart raced. She'd been thinking about this for weeks, the way her body responded when he was near, the way her pulse jumped when he touched her. She'd told herself it was just gratitude, just proximity. But that was a lie. She wanted him. The realization terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Seo-jun, she started, not sure what she was going to say. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He pulled back with visible reluctance and checked the screen. His expression darkened immediately. What is it? Problem at one of my properties. I need to handle it. He was already moving toward the door. I'll be back in a few hours. Don't wait up. Be careful. He paused at the door. Always. But when he returned near midnight, blood soaked through his shirt and his right arm hung at an odd angle. Amara was still awake, reading in bed, and she heard him come in. The way he moved, slow, pained, sent her running into the hallway. What happened? It's nothing. But his voice was tight with pain. That's not nothing. She moved to his side, carefully examining the arm. You need a doctor. Already called. Dr. Choi's on his way. She helped him to his room, settling him on the bed. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandage around his bicep. When she peeled it back, she saw the wound, a deep gash, clean edges. Knife, not bullet. Who did this? Someone who won't do it again. He winced as she applied pressure. The property dispute turned physical. I handled it. This is handled? You should see the other guy. Despite everything, she almost smiled. You're an idiot. Probably. Dr. Choi arrived 20 minutes later and stitched Seo-jun's arm while Amara watched. The doctor worked efficiently, commenting that the wound was clean and would heal well. When he finished, he packed up his supplies. Try not to get stabbed again this month, Dr. Choi said dryly. I'm running out of good thread. After he left, Amara sat on the edge of the bed while Seo-jun lay back against the pillows, exhausted. His shirt was ruined, blood still staining his skin despite her attempts to clean it. You scared me, she said quietly. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, just... She struggled to find the words. Just don't die. I'm not ready for you to die. His good hand found hers. I'm not planning on it. Good. She squeezed his fingers. Because I think I might actually care about you. And that's really inconvenient timing. A smile tugged at his mouth despite the pain. Inconvenient how? Because I married you thinking this would be protection. A business arrangement. But it's not feeling like business anymore. No? His thumb traced circles on her palm. What's it feeling like? She met his eyes. Like something real. Something I might actually want. The vulnerability in her admission hung between them. Seo-jun pulled her hand to his chest, holding it over his heart. I've wanted this to be real since the day I saw you in that bakery, he said. I just didn't think you'd ever want it too. I didn't think I would either. But you keep... She paused, searching for words. You keep showing me that I'm worth more than survival, that I can have things I want instead of just things I need. And I want you. I think I have for a while now. I was just too scared to admit it. Scared of what? That you'd get tired of me. That this would stop feeling like choice and start feeling like obligation. That I'd lose you the way I lost everyone else. Seo-jun sat up despite the pain in his arm, bringing them face to face. Listen to me. You're not losing me. You're stuck with me for as long as you'll have me. And this... He gestured between them. This is never obligation. It's the only real thing I have. Amar's eyes burned. You can't promise that. I can. I do. His hand moved to cup her face. I know I'm not an easy man to love. I know my world is violent and complicated. But I swear to you, Amara, I will spend the rest of my life proving that choosing me wasn't a mistake." "It wasn't," she whispered. "It's the first thing I've chosen that feels right." He kissed her then, not the brief chaste kiss from their wedding, but something deeper, desperate and gentle at once. Amara kissed him back, pouring 3 weeks of confusion and fear and want into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Seojun's forehead rested against hers. "I should let you rest," Amara said. "You're injured." "I've been injured before. I can rest later." But he didn't push, didn't demand, just held her close. "Will you stay? Just tonight?" She nodded. They lay down together, her head on his good shoulder, his arm wrapped around her. It felt safe. It felt right. "Tell me something," she murmured. "Something true that you've never told anyone else." He was quiet for a moment. "I was terrified the day we got married, not of commitment or the ceremony, but of the possibility that you'd wake up one day and realize you deserve better than a killer with blood on his hands. And now, I'm still terrified, but I'm also hopeful that maybe we can build something good out of all this darkness." She pressed closer. "We already are." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, two broken people learning how to be whole. The gallery showing was a success beyond anything Amara had imagined. People she'd never met stood in front of her paintings, studying them, discussing them, feeling something from them. 3 pieces sold in the first hour. By the end of the night, only 2 remained. Seojun stood beside her the entire time, quiet and proud. When a pretentious critic approached and made a condescending comment about her amateur technique, Seojun's response was ice cold. "Her technique captures truth. Maybe that's why it makes you uncomfortable." The critic left quickly. Amara tried not to laugh. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. Nobody insults my wife." The possessiveness in his voice sent heat through her. They'd been married almost 2 months, but hearing him call her his wife still did something to her. That night, riding home in the back of the car, Amara couldn't stop smiling. "I sold paintings. Actual people paid money for things I made. Because you're talented." Seojun's hand rested on her thigh, a casual touch that felt intimate. "This is just the beginning. The gallery owner wants to do another showing in 3 months, a bigger one. You should do it." "I will." She turned to look at him. "Thank you for making this happen." "I didn't make anything happen. You did the work. I just opened a door." When they arrived home, Amara felt restless with energy. Instead of going upstairs, she pulled Seojun toward the studio. "I want to start something new, something for the next show." "Now? It's almost midnight." "I know, but I'm too wired to sleep. Stay with me?" He did. While she sketched initial ideas, he sat in the corner reading reports on his phone. The comfortable silence between them felt like partnership, like they'd found a rhythm that worked. An hour later, Amara set down her charcoal and turned to find him watching her instead of his screen. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, just, I like seeing you like this. Happy. In your element." She crossed to where he sat and took the phone from his hands, setting it aside. Then she straddled his lap, her hands framing his face. His eyes widened slightly, but his hands came to rest on her hips, steadying her. "I'm ready," she said simply. "Ready for what?" "For this to be a real marriage, in every way." Her heart pounded, but she didn't look away. "I want you, Seojun. I have for weeks. I was just scared. But I'm not scared anymore." His grip on her hips tightened. "Amara, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to." She leaned in closer. "Unless you don't want." He kissed her hard, answering without words. His hands moved from her hips to her back, pulling her flush against him. Amara melted into him, finally letting herself have this thing she'd been denying herself. "I want you," he said against her mouth. "I've wanted you since the beginning, but I need you to be sure." "I'm sure." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Take me to bed, our bed." They barely made it to the bedroom. Clothes disappeared between kisses. When they finally tumbled onto the bed together, Amara felt nervous and certain at once. Seojun took his time, worshipping every inch of her like she was something precious. He murmured her name like a prayer, touched her like she might break. "I won't break," she whispered. "You can... I know. His voice was rough. But I've waited months for this. Let me savor it. And he did. He learned every sound she made, every place that made her gasp. When they finally came together, Amara felt something shift inside her. The last wall crumbling, the last defense falling away. This was trust. This was choice. This was love, even if neither of them had said the word yet. After, they lay tangled together, catching their breath. Seo-jun's fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder. You okay? He asked quietly. Better than okay. She turned to look at him. That was, yeah. He smiled, genuine and warm. It was. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time since her mother died, Amara felt completely safe. The next 3 months passed in a blur of gallery showings and quiet domesticity. Amara's art gained recognition. She was interviewed by a local magazine. Her work sold consistently. She even started teaching a workshop for underprivileged kids, remembering what art had meant to her when she had nothing else. Seo-jun's business stabilized. After Constantine, there were no more challenges to his authority. Word spread that his wife was off limits, untouchable. Anyone who forgot that lesson didn't forget twice. But the violence of his world still intruded sometimes. There were nights he came home exhausted, carrying weight she couldn't fully understand. She learned to read his moods, to know when he needed space and when he needed her close. Tell me something good, he said one night, collapsing onto the couch beside her. Blood stained his knuckles again, a familiar sight now. I finished the piece for the exhibition, the big one. Can I see it? She led him to the studio and unveiled the canvas. It was massive, 6 feet tall, and depicted 2 figures in shadow, hands reaching across darkness to find each other. Light broke through the gaps between them. Seo-jun stood silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. It's us. Yes. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. He turned to her. Everything you create is just... He struggled for words. I don't have the language for what you do. How you take pain and turn it into something people can feel. You do the same thing, she said, just differently. I create fear, that's not the same. You create safety. For the people under your protection, that's not nothing. He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. How did I get so lucky? Luck had nothing to do with it. You chose me. I chose you. We made this. That night in bed, wrapped in his arms, Amara realized something that should have terrified her but didn't. I love you, she said into the darkness. Seo-jun went very still. What? I love you. She turned to face him. I think I have for a while. I just didn't know how to say it. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? The kind of scared that makes you want to be better. To deserve what you've been given. She kissed him softly. You already deserve it. You just have to believe it. They made love again that night. Slower this time, tender. And when Amara fell asleep, she did so knowing she'd found something she never thought she'd have. Home. 6 months after their courthouse wedding, Seo-jun surprised her with a proper ceremony. Nothing huge, but meaningful. Min-hee cried. Elijah made inappropriate jokes. A handful of Seo-jun's most trusted people attended, along with some of Amara's new friends from the art world. This time, when the officiant asked if she took Seo-jun Kang as her husband, Amara's voice was strong and clear. I do, absolutely. And when Seo-jun said the same, she heard the promise underneath the words. The vow to protect her, to love her, to give her room to grow into whoever she wanted to become. The kiss was different too, not tentative or careful, but certain. A declaration. At the small reception after, Amara stood with a glass of champagne, watching Seo-jun laugh at something Elijah said. He looked lighter than she'd ever seen him, happy. Min-hee appeared beside her. Your mother would be so proud of you. You think so? I know so. She wanted you to be safe and happy and free to become yourself. And look at you now. Min-hee gestured around the garden where the reception was held. You've built a life. You're an artist. You're loved. That's everything she hoped for. Tears pricked Amara's eyes. I wish she could have seen this. I think she can. Wherever she is, I think she knows you're okay, finally. That night, after everyone left, Amara and Seojun sat on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The city lights twinkled in the distance, but the estate felt separate from all that. A world unto itself. Happy? Seojun asked, his arm around her shoulders. Yes. Are you? More than I ever thought I'd be. He pulled her closer. I spent years thinking I was incapable of this, of normal things like love and partnership. Then you walked into my life, covered in flour and trying to pretend you weren't broken, and I realized I'd been waiting for you. I wasn't pretending, I was broken. We both were. Maybe we still are in some ways, but we're broken together now, and somehow that makes us whole. Amara thought about that, about the girl she'd been 3 years ago, grinding herself into dust for a debt that didn't exist. About the man who'd watched her from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to pull her free. About the improbable, impossible love they'd built from violence and desperation and sheer stubborn will. I used to think survival was enough, she said quietly, that if I could just make it through another day, that was success. But you taught me that there's more than survival, that I'm allowed to want things, to have things, to be happy. You taught me the same thing, that there's more to life than power and control, that letting someone in doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. What do we do now? Amara asked eventually. Whatever we want. That's the beautiful thing about building your own life. You get to decide what it looks like. She thought about her upcoming exhibition, about the scholarship program she wanted to start for kids like she'd been, about the future stretching ahead of them, uncertain, but theirs. I want to keep painting, she said. And I want to help other people find their way out of the dark. Kids who think they're invisible. People who think survival is all they deserve. Then we'll do that. Whatever you need, whatever resources it takes, we'll make it happen. And you? What do you want? Seojun was quiet for a moment. I want to build something that lasts. Not just an empire based on fear, but something that actually helps people. I want to use what I have to make the city safer for people like you used to be. Is that naive? No. It's hopeful. And hope is more powerful than fear. He kissed her temple. When did you get so wise? I learned from you. Then we're both in trouble, he said with a smile. Amara laughed, and the sound carried across the quiet garden. She thought about the girl who'd shattered a cup in a crumbling bakery, who'd been invisible and broken and 1 week away from being trafficked. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd chosen her own life, who'd found love in the most unlikely place, who'd learned that strength wasn't about enduring pain, it was about knowing when to let yourself be saved. She looked up at Seojun, this dangerous man with blood on his hands and love in his eyes, and felt grateful for every choice that led her here. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. For fighting for me. For giving me the space to become someone worth knowing. You were always worth knowing. I just gave you the room to see it yourself. Maybe that was the real gift, she thought. Not the money or the house or the studio, though those things mattered. The real gift was being shown that she deserved more than she'd been taught to accept, that she could demand space and safety and love without apologizing for it. I'm glad you walked into that bakery, she said quietly. So am I. Best decision I ever made. They stayed on the terrace until the sky began to lighten with dawn, talking about everything and nothing, about the future they'd build together, about the past they'd survived, about the present they'd fought so hard to claim. And when they finally went inside, hand in hand, Amara understood something fundamental about the human condition. People weren't defined by their worst moments or their darkest choices. They were defined by what they did after, by whether they chose to stay broken or to rebuild themselves into something new. She and Seojun had chosen to rebuild. Together. And in doing so, they'd created something neither of them could have achieved alone. A home, a partnership, a love fierce enough to burn through years of darkness and pain. That was the thing about being saved, Amara realized. It wasn't about being pulled from danger and set on your feet. It was about being given the tools to save yourself and having someone stand beside you, while you learned how. Seojun had given her that, and she'd given it back to him. They'd saved each other, not from their circumstances, but from the belief that they had to face those circumstances alone. In the end, that was what love was. Not perfection or smooth sailing or the absence of darkness. It was choosing someone despite the darkness, maybe because of it. It was saying, I see who you are, the broken parts and the strong parts, and I choose you anyway. As Amara crawled into bed beside her husband, the man who'd been her savior and her partner and her choice, she smiled. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She was living, finally, truly living. And that was worth everything.